My name is N07. I'm the host of the Perspective Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. And as you see, this is a little bit scuffed here and there, but we're going to have some fun with it, right? So this will be the first episode. It's going to be here live on Twitch, probably at the same time, Tuesdays at 5 p.m. On the CarbonX _GG channel, I do believe. And it's going to be me, N07, and another guest. Today we have our wonderful friend, he's on that side actually, Kojo Mo on Twitter, also known as Colin. He's a good friend of mine, and we're just going to be talking, we're going to be shooting shit, and we're going to be talking about collegiate esports. We're going to be talking about motivation, the path to becoming a pro, and a little bit about Colin himself, as I'm pretty sure most people here are Colin stans on Twitter. So, if you would like to introduce yourself, Colin, go ahead. I'll give you a little spiel.
Well, as you said, I'm Kojo Mo. I am a varsity player for the Davenport CSGO team. Not very many people know me. I'm not very big in this team, so yeah.
I don't know about that. That's a little bit of a question. A question there. I mean, Twitter followers say otherwise, but yes, this will be the first episode, and I feel like if we just kind of let it go, let it hang loose, just have a little bit of a conversation about these different topics, I feel like it'll work really well. So the first thing I kind of wanted to talk about in this first episode is about collegiate esports, but a lot of times there's a large period of life before you get to 18, 17 years old where you go to college. So I kind of wanted to keep a little bit of that younger audience's tune. So I kind of just wanted to talk a little bit about motivation and how to kind of keep that motivation going, and to kind of segue that into the other things we wanted to talk about. So, I mean, especially for me, motivation has been one of those things that's been a driving factor through my life and through, I mean, a lot of people's lives. I mean, we're all gamers at heart, right? We're all people that love to play the game that we play, and whether it's CSGO like me and Colin, or whether that's Overwatch or Valorant or even Hearthstone for all we care. It's all really about finding that motivation and staying motivated through the tough times, through the burnout, through everything. And I mean, I don't think I have as many hours as Colin, but I have around 6,000 to 7,000 hours in Counter-Strike, and I feel like Colin has a lot more than that. And it's definitely one of those things where staying motivated through the tough times and, you know, doing the same routines over and over and over again can get really difficult for a lot of people, especially young kids, when they have school and friends and they want to go and they want to keep moving at a really fast pace. It's really kind of difficult for them to find that motivation to sit down and do the basics, grind those fundamentals every single day that a lot of people will lax on as they get older.
Yeah, that's true. I'd say that honestly, the biggest thing that you need to look at if you're a young player trying to get into the esports scene and take that step, whether it be collegiate or even further professionally, is just looking at yourself and asking yourself if you're capable of putting in the thousands of hours that you'll need to put in for those goals and dreams. Because it looks fun to be a professional player, to make it your job, but people don't realize the hard work and the hours and hours and hours of practice that have to go into becoming great at whatever you want to do, whether that be in esports, sports, a career. It's not always fun. You know, you gotta want it bad enough to go through the bad parts of whatever it is. You know, the losses, the demo reviewing. You know, and there's very few people capable of understanding that and even attempting to achieve that kind of stuff. So I think that if you're a younger player, the biggest thing is like keep your mental in check, and then keep your physical shape in check too, because those two things go a lot farther than CS and will help you become a better CS player or any esport player. And I think that people underestimate the importance of keeping a healthy mindset as well as keeping yourself in shape. So
Yeah,
that stuff is overlooked a lot in the scene, and I think that needs to change.
Yeah, and I definitely think we've seen an advancement with that ever since the Astralis era in Counter-Strike, where they implemented the sports psychologist, and now you have these massive multi-million-dollar facilities where you have sports psychologists and psychiatrists and nutritionists and mental health people that deal with that. And there's so many different aspects that these young up and coming talents, maybe in advanced or main in ESEA, that are really young and could go somewhere and could make a career out of it themselves, that don't have access to these things yet, to where they're having to do all of them on their own. And it's becoming very apparent these days that the players that do have the mental fortitude and have the mental drive to grind out the fundamentals, to go through the losses, to watch the demo back and figure out what they did wrong, and basically an understanding of maturity almost, to where when they get high enough in the scene, when they get to college, when they have access to all these things, which we'll get to in a little bit, these players will flourish. Whether they'll flourish in the classroom, whether they'll flourish in the real world, in a job, where it's just, CS doesn't have to be the end goal, and a lot of kids and a lot of players don't realize that it can be a really simple, it can be a fun activity that you do, and it can be something that maybe you make a bit of cash from. Maybe it's maybe you can consider it a side hustle in some areas. It's something that you do with your friends, and it can lead to finding the moments where you learn something in life rather than just in game, and that's going to go way further in anything than learning how to aim better, learning each smoke on each map. There's more to CS, and there's more to esports than just what's in front of you. And we're getting to see that a little better, but I feel like there's still more that we don't know yet. And I feel like being at the forefront of that and being, pushing towards that goal is something that like NA in specific should really strive for.
Yeah, I think that a lot of younger players, especially, they struggle with realizing that it's a team game as well. It doesn't matter how good you are as an individual player. If you cannot be a good team player, and if you can't provide for your teammates, then your talent is wasted. It doesn't matter how well you can aim. It doesn't matter how good you are in situations. You're not going to get anywhere unless you fix your life and be a positive person for your teammates and be someone that they can rely on in the game and out of the game. So I think a lot of younger players, if they learn that, they can go super far in the scene. And it's encouraging when you see people like that.
Yeah, I've seen these 14, 13-year-olds that are becoming these team players, like all these kids with really raw aim and really quick reaction times compared to some of the rest of us, that maybe don't want to be the entry fragger, maybe don't want to be the op, or maybe they want to be the support player and help their teammates out. It's getting those players that can grow and can become the better players is something that I feel like NA and esports in general needs. Is creating a team environment and creating a team that bonds together and works well together is going to be far more beneficial than becoming an individual like a Pugstar, but getting to that rank S or level 10. We've seen in the last couple of years the FPL grind, but it's just not becoming, it's not a thing anymore. It's unrealistic for most people.
See, and grinding, those kind of things are completely fine. It's completely fine. It's just understanding that you need to separate that grind from your grind with your team. And I see a lot of players in open, like IM main, they even advanced, they struggle to find teams, they struggle to stay on teams, and they point to having good stats and having good, but it doesn't matter if you're not capable of being a team player and capable of being the player that your teammates need. Then you're never going to find a stable team. You're always going to be jumping around. And yeah, so stats mean stuff, but they don't mean everything as far as a individual player goes. And I think younger players also, and that's where I kind of got into Twitter, connections are more important than your statistics. Statistics can help make you look good as a player and build up your credentials in a way, but your connections are really how you're gonna get to your next level and find that lasting team that you're going to be able to grind to Premier or Pro League with.
Yeah, I definitely think like a good analogy you could use for that is if you're like a main or advanced level team and you're looking at a player that's looking for a couple players, maybe that's the tier below, the league below. In my opinion, I'd rather take a 75 to 80 ADR player that I know is a good has good comms, good team play, wants to watch back with the team, wants to do all the extra step that is that is related to like a good teammate rather than a puck star with 90 to 100 ADR, but I've heard can be, sometimes egotistical, sometimes, being, wants to go and get those frags on his own. As a team player, I feel like, you can go way further with, having connections and, keeping that, not even like just being friends with people, just keeping those acquaintances close by, making sure, you're not posting stupid stuff on Twitter, making sure you're not in Discord calls being an idiot, It's all those little things that add up eventually to where you could miss a great opportunity just because of the way you've acted and the way you've been outside of the game.
Yeah, and that's also something I realized with, my former teams where when I was a younger player and, super inexperienced is you don't want to burn bridges just because you think you're never going to play on a team with these people again, or, life will always put you back around with the people that you thought you'll never see again. So if you're going to leave a team, if you're getting cut, it's better to just keep good relations with them and stay positive, because I learned quickly that burning bridges is not good for your own personal growth in the scene. And you need your name to be clean, and you need your former teammates to help recognize that you're a good player and a good person.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just like for most of these young players, it's very much, for me anyway, there's always that moment that you realize like, oh, maybe I should change. Maybe I'm the one that's doing something wrong. And I feel like a lot of these young players maybe haven't quite hit their moment yet. The way that I put it down is the way that the moment you fall in love, the moment you figure out that this is what you want to do and this is what you want to devote that time to, maybe it's midway through a season, maybe it's at the end of a season, maybe it's at playoffs. There's so many different situations to where you can fall in love with this to the point to where it almost sparks that motivation. It sparks that initial thought of, oh, I need to change. Oh, I want to work for it. This is how I'm going to do it. And I feel like writing this moment down, especially for me, is I have a picture of this moment that I have on my phone where it motivates me every single time I look at it. And maybe, Colin, you might have had a moment like that if you'd want to share it.
Oh, well, I guess I would just say, back when I was first playing, I wanted to be on a team that was gonna grind up through the divisions, and I started in open where most players started, and it started out well, and we started going through the divisions, getting promotion every season, and then life just hits you, and you get super busy and super you don't know how to balance things, and me as a person, I thought the best way to handle this was to just cut CS out of my life, not say a word to my teammates, and just not show up anymore. And that really hurt me because, that doesn't leave a good impression. And I think that people need to understand if things are happening in your life, stressing you out, you just need to come clean and be honest with, your teammates or whoever you're interacting with, because it's not fair to anybody when you just leave or, you do that kind of stuff to them. And life happens. Just be honest with people. And I think honesty is a thing. Honesty in the scene is overlooked a lot. And,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of teams suffer from that kind of stuff. And I realized that in my first few seasons that, that wasn't good for me as a player. And, one of the people on one of the teams that I did this to happened to be Arcade, a person I thought I burned bridges with. I handled very poorly. And then, he ends up being my teammate. We're living together. So that's what I mean when never throw dirt on people's names, never ruin your relationships with people, because you never know when you're going to need them in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially with the current, culture of NA, where we're really only seeing maybe I wouldn't even say a handful. There's really only at the very top. There's really only a very few select places where you can end up. So if you really grind and you really get there and you can get to the top, and this other person also gets to the top, or this other team also gets there, when you climb when you climb the pyramid of ESEA in specific, you go from open to IM to main to advanced, etc. The teams just get shallower and shallower and shallower. You get less teams as you go up. So if you're climbing efficiently and you're doing what you got to do, and another team is doing what they got to do, you're both eventually going to end up there. And if you've gotten to advanced and you're an advanced level player, but you've burned a lot of these bridges, you've burned basically, maybe one or two players from pugs or from 10-mans or whatever, or just on Twitter, you're going to have a really hard time retaining that level of competition purely because of how you are outside the game. It doesn't even matter, if you're a 110 ADR player at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I mean, you said it right. Like, as you go up higher, you start. It is almost more of a community. When I was in open, I didn't know names of players. I didn't know.
No.
But as I get higher and higher, it's like I'm running into the same people in scrims and tournaments and leagues. Like, and it's really important that even though they're your competitors, that you keep a relationship with them. You keep things respectful. Because honestly, I respect all the people I play against because they're playing at the same level as me. They're on the same grind as me. They may be at different points in their life, but we're all on the same path right now. Like, I can't hate on somebody for attempting to do the same thing I'm doing. And I'm not to call anyone in specific, but I see a lot of teams in Advanced and Premier just hate all the other teams and hate players and hate people just because they're successful or just because they lost to them. And it's so important to realize that instead of being angry and mad at the other team for beating you, why don't you look inwards and see what you can fix as a team and grow from that? And I see a lot of toxicity from teams and scrims, and from a reason. It's one thing to be a competitor, but it's another thing to just disrespect people.
Right, and especially with as you said, like, look further into deeper. One of the things that I was kind of thinking about when I was writing the stuff up for this podcast was when you have a situation like North America does right now in esports, to where we're limited to what we have. Like, as we're speaking right now, I think Godsend are playing Furia in the major qualifier, the IM major qualifier, and it's we're getting all these NA teams that are directly next to each other in NA. They're scrimming each other. All the premier teams are doing what they got to do. But then you have the teams that are in Europe. You have the Extra Salt, Furia, Liquid, that are just going to come back over here, that have had the better practice and the better tournaments, all that kind of stuff. They have the support from the teams to where, they're going to come back, and they probably are going to be better than a majority of the NA grown teams that we've had for the last 18 months. So when you have all these teams in NA that are just hating on each other, obviously, I'm not up there as much as Colin is, being on a different roster, but just hearing that all these other teams are hating on each other and not doing anything, it's like, why are we hating on each other? Why are we in a situation to where Bad News Bears is hating on, I don't know, Mythic for whatever reason? It's like, why aren't these NA players that want to make it to the next level and have an opportunity like the major, coming up? Why aren't these players working with each other? Why aren't these players, getting in Discord calls and, looking over demos, even if you're playing each other? Like, we all have the same goal. Why not help each other? Why not, like, obviously you want to be there. You want to be the person, not the person next to you. But, like, I didn't go to Frag, and we'll get there in a little bit with Colin and Davenport in a minute, but it's like all these people I guarantee everyone there was friendly. Everyone there being face to face. It was probably a fantastic atmosphere. It was probably one of the best things NA's had in about 18 months. I guarantee it. Maybe all the other smaller frags as well, but the main one, you had all the premier teams there. You had all the coaches, and basically everyone in the scene that's at that top is there. Everyone was friendly. But why does it have to be different when you're sitting at home on your computer behind the closed doors, when you can be helping the person next to you be better? Because we all know in sports and in esports, if the other person is better, you're going to get better. Elevate the scene, not just yourself, right?
Yeah, and I totally get, like, hugs and stuff, like how people can be toxic and stuff. Because I mean, I was there at one point. I totally was, you know, and I didn't understand what I was doing or where I was coming from. But I've never understood why people act like this in team play, and you know, are typing in the middle of a game, like doing stuff like that for no reason. But I don't know. It's frustrating, but I think it's just how people are, and you know what kind of person they are. But I do want to talk about, you know, the getting practice and stuff against teams, and I think that I can't speak for divisions higher than where I'm at now, like advanced level. But if you're advanced and below, you have no excuse for not getting better, because if your biggest tool is practicing against people who are better than you. It's finding scrims against people who are in higher divisions, have more experience, and learning what you can do from what they do to exploit your positions and your setups, and you know your strats, how they counter you, and then taking that and then using that within your game. So I think that for lower division teams to grow as a team, and individuals even, is just literally by getting practice against teams that are in higher divisions, and you know, losing to them, getting destroyed by them. But you know, you have nothing to lose when you do that kind of stuff, because all you have is positives that come out of it, from taking their strategies, taking their setups, and just learning what is wrong with your play. Why is that team better than your team? So I think it's, if teams want to progress in the scene, that is the key, is you know, putting your ego down, putting aside like everything you have, and just finding the best practice possible.
Right, and if you know, if that changes up a schedule, if that changes up, you know, anything to do with each of these players, like as Coach just said, there's really no excuse, because you know there's always teams in NA. You find there's scrim servers, there's just regular ESEA, you know, and as Colin said, you know, as we've been talking about for the last like 10 minutes or so, burning these bridges down, there's no problem with, you know, you messaging someone. Most of the people in the scene that are either a tier above you, or maybe even like if you're a playoff team in ESEA right now and you're doing well in playoffs, maybe a tier above that. If you're an IM team that's doing really well, why not reach out to an advanced team? Most of the people in the scene are really nice people and will respond to you. And if it's a no, you know, that's okay, you know, but keep that connection there, that you reached out to them, because there's going to be that day where they need a team to scrim, and they may not have a team that is at their level, but you know, you're now in main, you're now at that tier where they may be looking down at a little bit, or just want some practice, and keeping that connection there, you know, staying at the top of their, you know, their Twitter DMs, or, you know, their Discord messages. You know, it's one of the best things you can do. And it just keeps you in that loop. It keeps you in that cycle of, you know, keeping motivated and keeping everything going, and realizing that it's not going to be all negative, even if people say no.
Yep. And, you know, as the worst team on paper, like the lower division team, you have nothing to lose from the scrim. Anything, just being in the scrim, you are going to learn from that. You know, honestly, as the higher division team, they're the ones that, you know, they could beat you 30-0, but still come out the losers, because they didn't really learn anything or gain anything. Where, you know, you may get destroyed in a scrim, and you have all this new knowledge to implement into your own gameplay and, you know, your own matches. You know, the whole point of practice isn't to be easy and to roll people. The point of practice is to, you know, learn and, you know, gain XP and gain knowledge from other teams. So I think a lot of people are scared to scrim, you know, in quotes, good teams, or teams that they think are going to beat them. But it's so important to growing as a team, and it sucks. It really does suck when you get destroyed, but you know, you learn so much from it, and it's so valuable.
Yeah, and especially with the current ecosystem of NA, and the way that the industry is kind of moving along, you know, kind of creating that you know, path to, you know, being at the top, that, you know, path to pro, as you could almost say, to where, you know, you have your in game and you have that connection with people, but you know, we're gonna kind of segue into a little bit more of a fun topic here. But you have your online presence. You have your, you know, your Kojomo on Twitter. You know, you have your, you know, the things that you post, the thing that everyone can see, also plays into a part of all these different things. You know, you have Twitter, and you have in Discord calls with large groups of people. Everything you do is kind of under the watchful eye. And I mean, I don't post as much on Twitter as Colin does because he's kind of a professional Twitter poster at this point. If you wanted to kind of just go off about Twitter, I was kind of just going to let you talk about it and kind of how social media can impact this kind of space, because I'm really not super fond of posting on Twitter. I just kind of like all your stuff, and that's really all I do. So if you just want to talk about it, go for it.
Yeah. So it's so valuable as an individual to get your name out there and to get people familiar with who you are as not only a player but as a person. And it can be scary for people to do that, but if you want to go the next step in the scene and be known and have a name in the community, you need to get people familiar with who you are. And traditionally people went that route through streaming and through that kind of stuff. And I grew up in an area where that wasn't possible. My internet, I couldn't have internet that allowed me to do that. So my solution was to start branding myself on Twitter and trying to engage with as many people as I could and pop up in as many people's timelines and feeds so that they would at least remember my name or my image. And I mean, I think it's been pretty successful because I started doing this like not even a year ago, and I've grown a lot through this kind of strategy. And I've met a lot of good people along the way, and it like made a lot of connections that wouldn't have been possible if I was just another player in the server. So it may seem like shit posting or just messing around on Twitter, but it is so valuable to make friends and to get people familiar with Kojo Mo, get people familiar with the name. So I would suggest to any player that is trying to grow in the scene, it doesn't matter what division you're in. You can do this kind of stuff when you're in open. That is the awesome thing about this, is branding doesn't matter what division you're in. Use what you have. If you have a phone and you're playing CS, then you have endless content that you can provide the people and interact with. And it's just about making people feel respected and being kind to people, and you'll be amazed by the amount of connections you'll make and the amount of good people you make in the scene or that you find in the scene. So that's the whole point of my Twitter, is just get my name out there, get people familiar with who I am. And yeah, so I would suggest doing something like that for anyone who is trying to make their name last in the scene permanently.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen, like, with your Twitter, like, a certain outreach. Like, at this point, you're pretty much international. Like, I know you have a really big, I wouldn't say, like, really big, but, like, you have a pretty large majority of your following is from Brazil, which is really strange because you don't know Portuguese and you've never tweeted anything in Portuguese. And I don't think you've ever played a Portuguese team either. If I'm mistaken, it's literally all been natural and organic growth, and it proves that you don't have to play a Brazilian team, you don't have to play a team from South America. It's all these different things that maybe a lot of maybe in schools they don't teach. That's a whole other argument in itself. But marketing yourself as a player, marketing yourself as a person, most of all, is going to be way more beneficial for you growing as a player and you growing in the community than just being good. Not everyone is going to be like Stewie 2K where they can hop through a smoke every time in 2016 and just become famous for it. Everyone's going to need to find their own thing, and the best way to do that is honestly online. It's honestly social media. Twitter is really good for getting those interactions and getting, I don't know the correct term for it, but discovery. Like Twitter, you can see things that your friend, the people that you follow, like, you see everything that around your sphere. It can only get bigger. So
and I'll give you and all the viewers a little trick. When you make a name for yourself and you become popular in the community, you seem a lot better. You just look like such a better player, and people get intimidated by that. People are scared of that. And that's the big reason why I wanted to grow my brand and stuff so big, because when I was an open player, when I was first getting into the league, I saw all these names, all these streams, all these, social media people, and I was like terrified to play them. I didn't care how good they were. I just knew that they were big in the scene, and so I realized that, and I use that to my advantage for sure. And that also brings up the fact that if you are a confident player, you will go so far in the scene, not just CS, but anything you do in life, any sport you play, anything. And when you're in the CS server, for me, my mindset is always that I am the best player in the server. And that is what you have to have if you want to be a top player in the scene and a competitor. You cannot be scared of who you are playing. You can respect them as good players, but you always have to think that you are number one, that you're better than who you are playing. I don't care if I'm playing, Furia or Extra Salt. You have to have that mindset going in, or you're just, you're gonna play bad.
I mean, if anything, both teams are gonna have that mindset. You're, as you're saying, playing, one of those top teams. They have the backing, in their own opinion, or in Extra Salt's mind, or I think Pain is also at the top of Premier right now. In their minds, they are the best team. It's like they have that mindset. So if you aren't going into that game with the same mindset and determined enough to even just consider yourself the best in the server, these players are just going to run over you, and you're going to feel even worse, and it's just a downward spiral from there. So it's kind of just keeping a confidence up in everything that you do. Whether you're tweeting something out, whether you're talking with people, keeping that confidence, but paired with that maybe not responsibility, but having a perfect balance of being self-orientated, but also who you are as a person, kind of keeping that perfect balance of I'm the best, but team player is something that is very hard to find, but is idealistic if you want to grow and if you want to get better.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. With thinking that you're the best in the server, you cannot take away from your teammates. That doesn't mean start playing don't start doing stupid things. Don't start holding W and stuff. It's just about seeing the openings in the rounds and taking the space, and then doing what you do with it. And that's a big thing that gets on my nerves. And playing through the scene, playing on multiple teams, is when you can tell that one of your teammates is just playing for stats, or they're winning the round for you, but what they're doing is not correct, and it won't work at higher levels. And that is so frustrating to see. And it'll be on any team you play on. I've done it. Anybody you play with will do it, because we pug so much, and we play so many meaningless games where we get bored or we just want to kill, that we forget how to play smart CS, and we just make stupid mistakes. So I think it's about limiting that kind of stuff and realizing it doesn't matter if I get the kill, my teammate gets the kill. It's just about winning the round and making the smart decisions. And I think a lot of offers out there too, they need to understand that let your teammates get the kills, and don't risk losing your the op is so expensive. Don't risk losing the op. Don't risk doing so much economical damage to your team because you're on 10 health and you want to get the last kill. And I'm trying to do better at that with myself. And then also you can look at it team wise and just understanding that if the round, you're not going to win the round, and you have a better chance of saving your guns and winning the next round, just do that. Across teams, open through even Premier, it's about recognizing that, and then you will win so many more games because you decided to save in a 3v5 instead of go for it. So that's my rant on playing smart and while being confident. It's just, you can't be scared of who you're playing, but also be a team player. No one wants to play with that individual.
And yeah, I think that's definitely a really good segue into kind of probably the thing we should have been talking about this whole time, and that probably most people are here for, is talking about the collegiate esports scene, and this probably CS:GO more or less in general, since that's what me and Kojo are kind of more of a professional in, you could say. But I think, as you said, talking about those individuals that are trying to work with teams. I mean, I think Davenport's definitely had a change these last couple seasons that have definitely changed that. I mean, when you had the introduction of Spencer Pug, you had maybe that same situation where you had 3 or 4 players that didn't have as much experience, and you had a player with a lot of experience come in and try and change that. And you've seen that in a lot of colleges, especially. You had MTU with Voltage, and with recently you've had Illinois. I think it's Illinois State with CXZI from Triumph, and it's finding that transition from professional or from playing outside of school or just college in general to playing in school can definitely have a mindset of its own that's a completely different beast than playing on a team where that the level you're playing at, compared to in Collegiate where the level can be basically whatever you make it to be. And it's definitely very interesting to see how a lot of these schools are transitioning, and especially in this last season. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the current CSL season compared to previous ones, but I definitely think it's been way more competitive across the board. There's definitely a lot more teams that look a lot better. So we're seeing some growth in the collegiate scene as it is. And I definitely think I go to DU as well, as you can see the jersey back there. I play on the Davenport Ultra team. And obviously Colin plays on the varsity team. So, we're both at very different levels of collegiate. And I mean, I don't know about you, but it feels like a lot of these teams that are putting in the work and putting in the time and are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing are just taking leaps and bounds in front of everyone else.
Yeah, and I think the problem when you try to make like a superstar roster where you have one player that tries to take all the responsibility, and the problem becomes they are like the X factor to win the game. And if they have a bad game or a bad performance, it is so hard for the team to win the game because it's solely reliant on that one player. And I think a lot of times too, it becomes a problem for that star player because especially when they're playing collegiate matches, is they went from playing at a really high level to then playing in a server against players that are a lower level, and they exploit them, and they start to build bad habits because they can get away with a lot more stuff in these matches than they could at professional play. So I think that it's important to have a roster where everyone kind of shares the same responsibilities, and it's not reliant on one player, because it's not good for that one player or the team in the long term. And yeah, usually it doesn't work out, but I don't know. I think it's just important to have 5 guys on your roster that you can rely on and you can trust to win the game, win the round. And I can be like, hey, I'm having a bad game, and I have 4 other guys that can step up and win the game for me. So I think it's just about finding that kind of mix. And honestly, from my perspective, like I said, I'm not scared of any player in the server. I don't care what history they had, who they played for, who they're currently playing for. They are a human just like me. They make mistakes just like me. It's who is going to make less mistakes in the game, who is going to hit their shots, who's going to be a team player. That's all that matters. I don't care if they played in Pro League. I don't care if they are an open player. It's about managing your mistakes and doing that kind of thing. And I think it's hard for us too, because a lot of these college matches we're playing against teams that are unstructured, and they're not as well oiled as some of the teams will play in advance. Some of these main teams. So it's hard to play these collegiate teams because we're not used to playing that kind of style, and we're caught off guard by a lot of the stuff that happens because you don't see that in normal play.
Right, and I definitely think with the recent ESEA season, where you have Davenport making advanced, and you have a lot more. I believe there's going to be a total of 5 college teams in Maine. I'm pretty sure. I think there was just a team that was promoted from IM, if I'm not mistaken. I think there should be 5 total. But it's just looking to be really competitive, and you have, as you said, they may not be as well oiled as some of these advanced or main teams, but we're seeing college teams play together more, play together in these seasons, and just develop together, as that team aspect as we were talking about, where, they're playing more together, they're trusting each other more. And it's very interesting to see how the landscape of ESEA in particular is going to change over the next maybe 2 to 3 years, with how the college scene is going to basically, I think it's just kind of going to flood into it. All these teams that you're going to see in CSL or, and I'm not sure any of the other college leagues that we're going to have, but all these teams that are playing and that are playing well are going to want to stick together because they're playing well. So why would you change anything, right? Don't fix it if it ain't broke, right? So
yeah. And I think that the benefit of playing with your collegiate team in ESEA and just like in general and not playing for two teams is it allows you to put in a lot more time and then grow as players. And you're also seeing these people on a daily basis. And like in our case, we're living together. And I think that that is such a valuable resource and, advantage that we have over other advanced teams. We are living together. We're going through the same phase of our life together. And, it's like building that brotherhood, which I think that, is very similar to how you see like traditional sports and stuff. And I think it's such an advantage to have that. And I feel bad that, we're at a state with COVID and stuff, like, even some of the premier professional teams, they can't even have that at this moment. And, I think that we're very fortunate to have that with our roster. So.
Yeah, and especially with the developments of a lot of these other schools, like I know we can speak from experience. You living with Arcade and Pug, and me dorming with a couple of our teammates. It's definitely a different experience to where like you can see these people face to face, and even going to it's called the lab, but even like going over there and doing stuff, like for us, we've had like 2 or 3 practices where we've had all 5 and coach there. And it is such a different experience, and it's such a different way to learn about the game, because there's so much more that you realize when you're together, and there's so much more that you can do when you're together, because, in that moment, there's no hiding behind a Discord screen. If there's a problem or if there's something you are working on, you're all there, you all have input, there's something to be done, and it's really efficient, and it's a really good way to, technically just level up over time. Then, as you said, a lot of these premier pro teams that are at home and don't have this capability like some of us do.
Yeah, I mean, they're just living different lives, and not that's why we're very fortunate, because not everyone can just throw things away and move in with their teammates. You know what I mean? So it's just about seeing these people in person and realizing they're just like me. They're doing the same thing. And then also when we're playing the games, man, like I'm so much more hyped. I'm so much more like
feeding off each other.
Real. Yeah, exactly. And, you don't get that playing at home. I would play matches at my house at home, and it just feels so meaningless and pointless. But when you see your teammates with you, and it builds reassurance that they're there for you, and you're on the same page.
Yeah, and you have that advantage, but it's like you have that meme of in esports in general about like fist bumps at LAN, right? Yeah. It's like it's a meme, but it really shouldn't be, because even such a subtle gesture like that, like just giving your teammates acknowledgement, either it's saying, next round, keep going, or that was a good shot, good round, or anything like that. Being face to face and having that connection is really important, and it helps a lot. I mean, we can both talk personally about, playing next to 4 other people. It just like the atmosphere is completely different than, sitting in a bedroom, sitting in a dorm, across the country from each other. It's worlds apart. It makes the game it just makes the game feel different. It's that crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like, especially with that atmosphere of that specifically, I don't know about a lot of other colleges having the kind of the same landscape as Davenport does, but I know a lot of the other schools in Michigan do. I know a couple schools across the country also have like facilities and labs for their players to use specifically. But a lot of what we see in these college programs that is helping these players take that extra step and to help them, in the game is what they're doing outside the game, is having access to all those different things we talked about earlier with the, the nutritionist, the psychologist, the, all those extra things that, help a player that a lot of these young kids and maybe some of the, more mature players don't really realize is being offered at these schools. And a lot of these college players are taking advantage of because it's there and it's accessible.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest, one of the biggest advantages we have is, we have access to gym. We can hit the gym with our teammates. We, we're keeping our mind active while we're in school. As much as we all hate school, it does keep me mentally sharp, and it gives me something to do at least every single day, and it keeps me from being lazy and that kind of stuff. But also with DU especially, it's so nice because we have access to a lab where we can practice and have tactical sessions with the whole team, and get to know each other. And we have all the facilities, basketball, soccer field, whatever, to hang out and just spend time with our teammates and grow that chemistry, as well as funding to go to these tournaments and all kind of stuff that just take the stress off of me and the other guys on the team, where we can just play the game. And I think that's why we are finding so much success, because we are literally just playing the game. We don't have to worry about where to find money to join these leagues. We don't have to worry about how to travel to these events. We just sit here and play the game and do our job.
It's like finding that balance between, that life, that aspect of life, and that aspect of being an esports player. Unless you are making a full-time living off of it, it's really difficult to have that, that mental strength to separate the two. And especially, being at college and having these college, technically it's literally just a college's wallet, having funding and having that backing from people that, I don't know about you, but when Davenport went to Frag, it's you got the funding to do that. If in a technical term, you have other people that believe in you and that trust in you, and you're representing the school's name, and you're doing outstanding things. Maybe a lot of college boards is a lot of board of directors, and majority of them probably don't understand esports as much, but you can definitely see, with the development and with things are going, traditional sports probably started out in the same place couple hundred years ago, right? You have these really old rowing schools and lacrosse and polo, and it's all these schools started from somewhere, and eventually in esports we're gonna get a situation, especially in collegiate, where it becomes a force that these schools have to take note of. Some schools have already kind of taken note of it, but you have these schools that need to start taking note of it. Pac-12 schools, Ivy League schools. Of course we have, a couple of those schools are kind of looking at it and have clubs and stuff, but I'm waiting in anticipation for the day that we have news come out that a esports player is on full ride and a college trusts them like a professional team does.
Yeah, the next breakthrough in the scene, I don't think it will be a CS:GO first, but in the collegiate scene will be when these bigger schools start, funding these players and stuff. Look at CS. I mean, I'll just shout out a few teams I know, UCF, Michigan State, even some of the guys at IU. There are some great players that go to these schools, but they have no incentive to play with their collegiate team in ESEA or anything else, because the school doesn't back them. With DU, I have such an incentive to play with my guys and play in the ESEA and play in all this stuff because of the backing that our school provides us. So I think you're right. With the next breakthrough is when these bigger Division 1 mainstream schools will give them the same the same thing that we're getting at DU, and I'm excited for that, because I do believe that there will be a day that happens. But
and it's definitely interesting, because if you think about it in a more logical term, these large schools have more money. They have backing in their own systems, to where picking up maybe 2 or 3 teams is less than 20 people, with staff. Maybe you're looking at 15 to 20 people for an esports program that's top of the line, it's not a large sum of money for some of these major schools. And it's just like, it's not a matter of why or how, it's more just a matter of when. It's the way it's going to go. And, having all these benefits, like as you said, education keeps you smart. Like, especially for me, it's like, it creates that routine, I have a routine, wake up, go to school, do my schoolwork, and then CS. It keeps me prepared throughout the day. It keeps me on doing everything rather than just CS.
That's the beautiful thing about being part of collegiate esports, especially if you're aspiring to be playing at a higher level, is now we have a backup plan. I can pursue what I want to pursue while obtaining my degree, while getting a degree in something that I have passion for. And I don't know how orgs are supposed to compete with that if they can't offer, tens of thousands of dollars plus salaries, to the players, because, that is such a valuable thing to have, especially at the age that we're at. A lot of people wouldn't be able to participate in these kind of things because, they don't find it worth it, especially at the state NACS, is that where it can be hard to find a salary for an organization and stuff. So colleges can definitely provide the money incentive that a lot of people are looking for, especially with these college leagues that offer so much money.
Yeah.
It's just it's so lucrative for players.
Yeah, and especially with the Bad News Bears situation, with them only having a couple sponsors and them not being able to go over to Europe. If you have a major school, you have a couple major schools in America that don't even have clubs yet. It's like they have the funding for these players. And a lot of these players, maybe in their, early 20s, maybe they didn't finish, maybe they started college. I know a lot of players in Premier and a lot of players that, are right on that cusp of getting to that, that pro league spot, decide to drop out of school and give it all that they've got. But, in theory, it's like, there's no reason when you have these schools that are willing to back you up and willing to believe in you, and to give you all the benefits that, a college athlete, let's say like a football or basketball player gets, when it's right there in front of you, And esports isn't a long time thing. Everyone knows that. Some of the oldest players in esports, particularly come to mind of the Virtus Pro players, like etc., they aren't playing forever. They're only going to late 30s. And that's, in theory, a human, in modern day medicine lives up to 100 years. That's only 30% of your life. And if, you don't have a backup plan for those later years, it's at that point, it is probably back to school or 9 to 5 in a situation you don't like until you retire.
That's why it's important to brand yourself and make a name for yourself so that you can use the connection you've made over the years to transition into, there's multiple routes you can go where you can transition into a coach, an analyst, or even look at what a lot of pros have been doing recently, where you're transitioning into an analyst for like these big events, or even casting and production. So that is the most important thing, I would say, as an individual is, it's good that you can point and click heads, and it's good that you're this insane player. But if you can't build a brand behind yourself, and you can't make people familiar with who you are, it means nothing at the end of the day. So that is the most important thing for up and coming players.
Yeah, and especially since, like, why not, in terms of what Koja just said, it's very much, why not do all that, while branding yourself and, being that player that can click heads, but has a backup plan. Like, a lot of adults will tell you, and a lot of smart people will tell you that there's no reason to not have a backup plan. There's basically no excuse. If things don't work out, no one's going to be upset at you. No one's going to be mad at you. Your parents aren't going to be frustrated at you if your dream didn't work out.
Even if things do work out, like you said, there's a expiration date on every single player, every single human. So even if things do work out, you have to have that as a way to transition onto your next phase of life. So
right,
it may not seem important now, but it is so vital.
And even just like, and even at college, it doesn't need to be like a very specific degree. It doesn't need to be something that you have to go into. It doesn't have to be this forcing drive in your life. A lot of times it's just, getting that extra education. You know, college teaches you a ton of other things than what you would learn in high school. You take a lot of different classes, you meet a lot of different people that have perspectives that you don't. The classroom is one of the most, you meet the most wide range of people and you learn the most compared to basically any other environment ever.
Yeah, it's just about doing something with your day and feeling like you're a productive member of society.
Yeah.
I for a brief time in my life, I was the person that just literally all I did, I'd wake up, play CS all day, and then go to sleep. And you feel horrible. No matter what level you're playing at the end of the day, you feel like you wasted your time and you wasted. And so I think it's important, not just with CS, but with anything you do, is just finding something that makes you feel like you had a meaningful day, that you're being productive. And I think that's the problem with pugs, is they're pretty pointless. And I think the more I grow as a player and, that I've reached the cap as far as like Face It and ESEA goes, I spend way less time pugging, if not no time pugging, and more time thinking about the team CS and just improving my life outside of CS, and not getting burnt out, which I know you want to talk about. And it's just, if you want to avoid burnout, just find meaningful things in your life that make you happy. And then when you play CS, think about it for the team. Think about the progress you can make as a team player instead of necessarily your individual stats.
Yeah, and even just like in general, just with the, trying not to get burnt out, a lot of these extra aspects that people don't think about, and a lot of these things that a lot of players don't want to do, will help them not burn out because it's something else to do. People drive off having, the next thing. People want the next pair of shoes. People want the next Logitech Superlight to come out. All these different next factors that come out help you not burn out because there's something to look forward to. Playing CS all day, playing 8 pugs a day, and then doing team practice, you're going to get burnt out. Or playing 4 hours of DM a day, as I've experienced recently, is a really quick way to burn yourself out because it's the same thing and you're not looking forward to anything because it's just more of what you've already been doing. So having multiple avenues in your day-to-day life, that being school, that being maybe work, that being CS as well, it can help you in turn have stronger mentality and also clear your head about a lot of different aspects of the game.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And it's just about enjoying your time. And like, honestly, from my perspective, like, I don't necessarily play CS for fun. It's it's a job almost. I mean that's why, like, playing pugs and stuff and meaningless things like that is just not a way I can continue playing CS. So it's like about finding new ways to enjoy my time and finding those meaningful matches, meaningful moments, and honestly, like, playing meaningful teams. Because if I'm playing a team I know we're gonna roll, I'm gonna be less motivated to warm up, do this kind of thing, than if we're playing at teams our level or at a higher level, or even professional teams. You're excited to play. It feels meaningful.
So you're telling me you don't get burnt out after 17 pug wins to make rank S?
No, that was exciting. That is one good thing. If about it's like you're not at the top of the ladder, so that it is kind of fun to pug when you see that rank up coming. And as meaningless as it is so nice to see that. But like on Face It, I have like 3,000 elo. It is so pointless to pug, and I see people pugging 10 pugs a day after they're already level 10, and it's just, there's no point. I don't understand. And I used to be like that, so I don't understand. There's no point.
Ranked could be a whole episode on its own about the what ranked has done to gaming in general. But I think, moving on kind of a little bit, I kind of wanted to, have a little bit of more of a perspective into, your career and your kind of aspect of everything. Because, as I said at the beginning, majority of people are here for you, not me. So we've kind of already talked a lot about DU. But just going back a little bit in your own career, as you said, when you were a younger player, you were hopping from team to team, and everyone does that from time to time. But you kind of started to take it a little bit more seriously, and you took yourself a little bit more seriously, and that kind of started around late or early last year when you had joined the CarbonX roster and made that main run to win the whole thing. I believe it was season 36.
Season 36, yes.
Yeah, and then eventually becoming Team Valkyrie, going into season 37 and making playoffs and advance the season afterwards. So it's very interesting to see how your career has progressed and where you've ended up.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, a lot of it was I just had so much in my life to balance and so much things going on. Like I said, I've had to take so many breaks from CS because of trying to be an athlete while trying to work and try to go to school. And as you climb the divisions and get up higher, it is impossible with the amount of hours you have to put in to balance all those things. So I do feel as if my career, I've made advance 3 times. If we make 4 times, this will be the 4th time I've made it, I think. And yeah, 4th time I made advance. And every time prior to joining CarbonX, I had to give it up because I couldn't balance that kind of stuff in my life. So I think that's also why I'm so confident as a player, and is I played when Third Impact was in main. I played when all these teams were in main that are in Premier now, even like Eros. I mean, I've beaten many of those guys back past seasons and stuff. So it's realizing, hey, these dudes were exactly where I was. These dudes are exactly like the type of player I was at. You know what I mean? So it's just understanding that no one is just a premier player. They're built up through seasons of playing with people and seasons of learning and understanding the game. And they were all where you were at one point. They were all main players. They were all open players. They were all IM players. So there's no reason to be intimidated by any of these players, especially me. Like when you're in a server against me, you shouldn't be scared. I'm just a human too. I'm a player. So I think it's just recognizing that. And yeah, I wish I would have recognized that sooner, because I would have been playing at higher divisions if I realized that everyone's human, everyone's the same as me.
Right, and especially with the kind of situation, if people have followed you for a little bit longer than the DU kind of popularity, but right before, like as I mentioned a little bit before you were talking, you made advanced playoffs with Valkyrie the season before you joined the Davenport main team, which is kind of a really strange situation because I mean I was here around the same time that you joined, but I was here like a little bit before, just like behind the scenes. So I was, hearing a little bit of the gossip about, what might be happening and et cetera, et cetera. But if you want to explain that a little bit more with, I don't know how in depth you want to go on it, but the possibility of playing in Premier is kind of a really big deal and a really big step for a lot of players. And, would that be something you would have tried to balance with coming to DU, or would you have just made the switch like you did regardless of if Valkyrie made Premier?
Well, going into the playoffs that season, I think we came to an agreement that if my team had made Premier, then I would have played Premier probably one season just to get that XP and get that practice and see what happens. But I would still play collegiate matches and everything with you guys. But ultimately, we came short, and we lost on advanced playoffs, and it was still a really good season. We still performed very well for being coming from main, and ultimately we had the lack of practice at the end of that season, and it kind of made my choice, like it reinforced my choice to come to DU to play CS, because I was missing what I wanted so badly, as in the accountability for every player on the team to practice, to not miss out on practices because we're sleeping, because things come up, is just the accountability of having your teammates with you. And a lot of people were confused by my decision to go back down to main, essentially, because
Right.
why would you do that when your team just made advanced playoffs, and you were almost like, we were almost favorites that season, and we just fell apart.
You were number 4 seed,
But
I believe.
yeah, and honestly, like, we had all the momentum, but it was, in my eyes, it wasn't really a step down to go to main. A lot of people may have viewed it as that. It's more of an investment into my future, because I realized, what is the purpose of playing on these teams online that I might play for a few seasons, and we might make a little bit of money, but what is my end goal here? I don't want to be 23 years old still playing around, like, not knowing what I'm doing with my life. So it was kind of, it's an investment in my future to join the U. And it didn't matter to me that they're in main, because that wasn't my reason for joining. It's being with them in person, and seeing them day to day, and, like I said, obtaining a degree that I'm going to use, and just living CS and living Davenport, like, living. It's just a culture that you can't get through online CS. So it definitely wasn't a step down. And I think that we're proving that. We're on track to win main. It'll be my second time winning main, so I'm trying to follow in the footsteps of season 36 with that, and prove to people that this isn't a step down, it's a step up.
Right. It's just, you have to kind of, I think your career is one of those things where, you were one of those up and coming players. You're one of those, you probably could have been considered one of the top 5 oppers in NA at the peak of Valk, right? It's just one of those things where people don't know everything, and people don't know what you want as a person. But then, it's kind of like that underdog story with you guys in main right now. There's a little bit of an underdog story going on with, the collegiate scene and coming up in NA, and you guys are at the forefront of it. So it's one of those situations where, if you stayed with Valk, if you were in Premier, there's a storyline that could have been done there, but there's also a storyline that you miss here. So it's one of those things where, it's kind of like the whole Marvel, the whole Marvel universe thing, where it's like one decision can change everything, and well, it just worked the way it did.
I just didn't want to be another player, and like, that's with my whole Twitter thing. It's like, if I'm playing on these teams, I'm just another player. With this, we have such an interesting story, and I can be part of something way bigger. And I am so glad I made this decision for that reason, because now I'm not just a player. I'm part of the bigger picture, of the rise of college CS, and hopefully, I mean, we're already starting to get articles and attention. Like, hopefully, I'm being part of something that will have a longer lasting meaning for the scene, and people can look back and remember my time at BU and all of our time at BU. So I can't get that with it. I can't get that on other teams. I'm just another player. It doesn't matter how good I am.
It's kind of like one of those situations where we had with the 2014 summer of Cloud9 with the tank tops. It's like, that's a really big thing in North American CS, and it's a really big, like, you look back on it and you fantasize it. It's, in a couple years.
Fantasizing about the tank tops?
Bro, always, man. Hey, Cloud9, bring the tank tops back. No, but it's it's like, it's, why not, take the step like you did, and, in maybe 3 or 4 years, 5 years down the line, when, we look back on it, you think of the Cinderella Davenport University CSGO story. You think of the birth of, North American collegiate esports in general, the first college team that made it to the top, and it's a no-brainer, in my opinion.
Well, we're trying to do, similar to what RMU did, but take it one step further. I think when people think of prior to us, when they thought of like the rise of college esports, it was with RMU and the success that they had. But I think what's interesting with us is we almost have even more of a story than them. They may have been first, but I think that what we have is something special, and I can't even put my finger on it, but I know that we're going to do big things, and I'm excited to show people what hard work can do, and what having 5 other brothers can do for you.
Yeah, 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
We won't get into 6-man rosters with you. That's a topic that I don't want to get into. But I kind of just wanted to talk a little bit in these last couple of moments, especially with the rise of collegiate esports and stuff. Kind of just talking about you having four brothers and how that kind of like transported to LAN. I know you before in the summer were playing a couple Fragadelphias and you're doing kind of your own thing with a couple other people, but then playing that main Fragadelphia with the Davenport core and the Davenport, just the whole program basically behind you at that point. Like, what was that? Did that just bring a new like level of confidence for you guys?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I went to all the other frags except the Oceanside, and it was fun. It was so much fun, those events, and I met some amazing people, and played with some guys that I'm so happy I played with. But it's still, at the end of the day, after every tournament, during every tournament, I still have that feeling of like, man, this isn't my team. These are just like friends. Like, I really desire to play with, the guys I'm going to be building something with. So when the main frag came, you're always nervous playing at an event like that. Like, you get the butterflies. You're playing
Right.
at, this is it. Like, you can't mess up. There's no, it's serious. But I was so excited to play with them, and honestly, even if we went 0-2 in that event, I would have been so fulfilled and happy just to have that opportunity to play with them. It's incredible that I can travel the country, and especially with DU, travel the country on someone else's dollar. Like I pay nothing for it, and I get to see parts of the country I never would get to see without CS.
Yeah, and I mean, even playing on the ultra team, technically the JV team, as you could say, it's like for me, it's like being around just the atmosphere. Like even if you're not on that varsity team, even if you're not there, I've learned so much from just being around these guys and being in the same room, and like me and Colin have played soccer together, and working out together, like all these extra things. It's like you don't realize it, but it's like it's something you don't want to miss out on, to be like honest with probably everyone. If you're in a situation where you can do it, it's one of those things you have to consider. And we're living, breathing in a time where everything is changing because we're coming out of a time where nothing happened. So why not get in there and shake it up a little bit, But especially for you guys, like, is there anything like in the future that like is in the works? So like I know you've talked about being the first, not the first, but like being the most impactful team, maybe to come out of collegiate like esports in general. Is there anything in specific you guys are working towards? I know Premier is, the Premier dream is always there, but is there like a trophy or something you guys are chasing after?
Well, we have a few goals for Collegiate. We're trying to not drop a single game against any team in any like
Drop a
league,
map?
anything. Uh, Sometimes RNG can happen, but that would be sick. But mostly just not losing a single match. But sometimes with you have a bad game and you lose a map that you
I'm
shouldn't
waiting
lose.
for the I lagged tweet.
Yeah, yeah. But we're no. So our goal within Collegiate is to win every tournament we're in, win every league we're in, and then also on top of that, go the extra step of not losing a single match in those events, which is extremely difficult. But if any team is going to do it, it's going to be us. And then, as you mentioned, within ESEA circuit, making that Premier, personally, Premier is not the end. Everyone wants to make Premier, and then they struggle on Premier because you set your goals for something, and then you made the goal, so you get complacent with where you're at. You know, why not set the goal to Pro League? Why not set the goal even higher than that? So,
Mm.
but I think for now our next step is making Premier. But ultimately, the sky is the limit. Um, I don't know what would happen as far as that because with a whole bunch of like funding and stuff like that, that would come into question. But
Right.
Premier's the goal. We'll see where we go from there. Um, and then yeah, within Collegiate, no losses. And like I said, if anyone's gonna do it, it's gonna be us. So we're definitely in the driver's seat within collegiate leagues, and I'm excited to see who's willing to challenge us and prove to us that they're just as good as us.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing that these, a couple of these other teams, they're knocking on the door, they're pulling on the gate, but I mean, it's you guys are in, as you said, you're in the driving seat, so it's whether, you let those teams in and, help you on that journey, or you just take all the glory for yourself. I mean, that's really up to you guys on whether, you have the drive, the motivation to do so. But I think we're about wrapped up here. We're pretty much almost at an hour and a half, so we've talked for quite a while on everything. But I think as of right now, I think just to kind of wrap things up, Collegiate Esports, is going somewhere. People need to take note. This podcast is the birth of this shit. You heard it here from this man. I need to remember which side I'm on, but you heard it here from one of the players that is at the forefront, is at the front. He's saying he's better than all of you, so I'm going to hold him to it. If not, I'm going to put 45 extra pounds on his bench press. But, but we can all help NA grow in the end. I'm, going to try my best. Colin's going to try his best. Everyone else, it's we're all in this together pretty much. We're all trying to work together, but, some people are going to be at the top, some people aren't. It's just the way it's going to go, and it's in the end, it's just the perspective we have, I guess. I tried to name the podcast. I'm pretty bad at this, but as it goes, Colin, if you want to say anything just before the end, if you want to plug your already famous Twitter, go for it.
I just say follow me at C0J0M0 on Twitter. Stay tuned with our collegiate matches as well as our ESEA matches. We actually have one tonight that will be streamed on DU Esports. But I would just say, as my closing remarks, is I want the community to be together, but at the end of the day, it is competition, and it's just about having that respect for your opponents and compete with them in the server, but then outside of the server, realize that we're all on the same goal. We're all trying to achieve the same thing. So just be a human to everybody and just be normal. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I don't really have much else to say. I'm loving life here in Grand Rapids. If anyone else is interested in, if you're watching from any other esports, I would say for colleges, if that interests you, and you'll be shocked to see some of the offers that you can get, and the opportunities you can get within the collegiate space. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could both preach from that same perspective. I'm just gonna get memes where I'm just like this. Colin's a really, really good player. He's got probably the best perspective that I've met here, and he's helped me a lot with everything. And even just coming from a multi esports background like I have with different games and stuff, there's more to life. There's more to life than esports, and eventually over time it'll become a reality, and that's just the way it goes. But I think we're about wrapped up here. If you want to find my Twitter, it's at itsno7. I believe it's right there. I found it eventually. But this will be episode 1 of the Perspective Podcast. Hopefully in the next couple weeks or so, we'll figure some more stuff out. I have one more guest confirmed, but that'll be in a little bit of a while. Hopefully I'll figure some stuff out in the meantime. And I just want to thank everyone for watching. If you're live here on Twitch, thank you so much for coming to the CarbonX_GG channel and watching along with us, maybe talking in chat. Maybe in the future I'll have the chat up so I can respond to a couple questions at the end if there is any, but for today we're just going to cut it off a little easier. But I just want to say thank you once again for watching. This will be uploaded to YouTube on the CarbonX YouTube channel probably by tomorrow, hopefully around the same time. And I just want to say have a good rest of your night, everyone. We'll see you next time.